Welcome to Sartor TV. I'm Vanessa Tyler. Do you want to be wealthy in every way? Well, there is a path to getting there. Author McCarthy is here to show us the way. May, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with your success journey. I know you were involved in a lot of successful companies. Talk about how you got to this point here.
Well, it started a long time ago. I was trained, really, when I was just a little kid by my parents. My dad was a surgeon, but he was also an entrepreneur. And he had a really interesting way to do business. He taught all of his kids that if we wanted to have any money, we had to work for it. And the best way to work for something is to figure out a problem that other people have, solve it, and have a fair exchange of value. They'll give me money, I'll give them either a service or a product. So I actually started becoming an entrepreneur throughout my whole childhood. And then when I went away to college, my sister, who was living in Seattle, decided that she didn't want to be in real estate anymore and wanted to start a business of her own and asked me if I would join her. So in 1982, we started a fashion show retail company and grew that and sold franchises and eventually sold the company. Then I had 3 in telecommunications and 2 in software and equipment to automate drug distribution processes for pharmacy.
And it's across the board because that's almost a tech, and the other one is arts. Yeah,
I'm never the idea person. Fortunately, I've always had really great business partners that I've teamed up with who are the idea people. What I learned how to do was figure out how to take complicated ideas and messaging and boil it down into something that's very easy to understand. My motto was always that you should imagine that your grandmother is sitting in the back of the room and she's going to need to understand what it is that you do. And so you better be able to explain it really simply. And we've done that in all of my businesses, taken what might be technically or complicated and transformed it into a really easy to understand message that shows how we could have a fair exchange of value. We solve a problem, we receive money in return.
And now you're continuing in that vein by talking about Path to Wealth. I wanted to just start about the book. Why this book and why now?
I was asked, I belong to a spiritual organization, and ever since I was a kid raised as a Catholic, we were taught that tithing was a prosperity tool. And I had proved it, and I believe in it. But I also found that I could teach people how to achieve greater success. I had taught hundreds of salespeople, customer service people, managers, other executives in my organizations and in other organizations how to achieve more of their goals. I've taken this idea of becoming a self-proclaimed efficiency expert to a whole new level and teaching people how to do something really simply. And what I learned in that process was that you could do some things provable and repeatable things on a daily basis to enable more success. And so when I went to my new spiritual center, followed my sister, who's a reverend, wherever she goes, I go, because I believe that spiritual community is important. It's a place that you can rely on each other. And I was asked by the spiritual leadership, what are you doing to be so successful? You're tithing more than most people tithe, and what are you doing? And so I explained that I am a self-proclaimed efficiency expert and that I use a simple daily practice to achieve goals, and it seems to be paying off. So they asked if I would teach it. And after about the 500th person had gone through the workshop with good success, I was asked to write a book, and a publisher found me and the book came out. So.
Is that book especially needed now?
I think it is, because what happens traditionally in the world is whatever gets your attention and you start to focus on, you're going to see more evidence of that occurring. And with all of the social media and, of course, mainstream media out there talking about what you should put your attention on isn't necessarily consistent with what people would really like to have as their outcome of their life. Often what we read about or see sensationalized are really things that don't make us really happy. They're highlighting problems. And as we continue to focus our attention on more problems, guess what we're going to see?
More problems.
So I think this is especially needed because we need to get into a habit of focusing more on what we want. And we have to focus on what we want the outcome to be. Not just that we want a healthy life or more money. I mean, what is our life like if we were perfectly healthy, if we were financially free, if we were in harmonious relationships, not only with our family and friends, but our community and our world? What is our life like when we've achieved those goals? And as we stay focused on that outcome, we're going to start to notice more evidence of it occurring in our lives.
In our businesses, in which, a lot of business people watch and they're saying, this sounds great personally, but how can I translate that to business? Who would benefit the most from this book?
Hopefully, people are guided to read it that need it. But I think anyone can. Anyone can benefit from it if they want to achieve something. Most of us have ideas of what we want, but we don't know how to word it properly. And that would be in our personal lives and our businesses. For example, I've used this technique that I outline in my book to achieve huge financial success. But I name the success and what the outcome is as it relates not only to my business, but my coworkers, my customers, my suppliers and vendors in our world. How are we contributing to the world with our business growing to be successful? And always finding some sort of mission that everyone in our company and our customers and our suppliers and vendors can get on board with. Something that's bigger than just making money.
What should we do spiritually to walk on the path of financial abundance in our daily lives?
Well, spiritual is a really interesting word. And the way I use it is that there is an intelligence and a creative source that shows up in a number of different ways to guide us and direct us towards what we're putting our words, thoughts, and emotion on. In business, you often hear people like Bill Gates who will say often you have to rely on intuition. And Steve Jobs from Apple agreed. He said that we had to have courage to follow our heart and intuition. And Oprah Winfrey, who I think is one of the most influential women of our time, she's listened to that still small voice of intuition her whole life. And the only time she's made mistakes is when she didn't listen. So there's something that can't be seen that can guide us and direct us towards achieving our goals. And those successful business people call it intuition. You can call it whatever you want, divine intelligence, power, truth, but something is going to show up through this creative source that guides you and directs you towards achieving what you desire. But the key is figuring out what it is that you want and wording it properly.
You advise we commit a daily practice of 7 steps. What are the 7 steps to financial abundance?
First of all, I should probably let you know why I named the book The Path to Wealth. First of all, it's a catchy name, of course, but wealth for me is defined as being whole and complete, lacking nothing in all areas of your life. It's not just your finances, but your relationships, your use of skills and talents in remarkable and fulfilling and satisfying ways, your recreation, your relationships with your coworkers, with your family, with your community, your world, and also your spiritual connection, whatever that may or may not be. Having some sort of connection to that intelligence that's available to guide you is part of being whole and complete. So I have 7 steps that I outline in the book. And probably the most important thing is that you're going to create a partnership with this source of intuition, with this divine intelligence, which is beyond your rational mind. It's available to each and every one of us. It's not limited to just a few. All of us have experienced intuition. Often, though, we notice it after the fact. You know, we'll see something happen that's good and say, oh, my gut was trying to tell me to do something, and had I done that, I would have achieved this. Or my gut was trying to tell me not to do something, and if I would have listened, I would have avoided this mistake. So many of us know that idea of intuition. And what this practice does is help you to identify, to recognize intuition showing up so that it can be helpful to you. So you want to recognize it and take action on it before you actually miss out on something or experience something that you don't want. So partnering with this source of intuition is probably the key in this 7-step process. You're going to have your job to do, and your partner will have its job to do. Your job is to figure out what it is that you want and describe it as though it's already completed with gratitude. Your partner's job is to create the path for you to get there and give you one step to take at a time on that path to get there. You can either take the step or ask for another lead, ask for another sign, ask for another message. And those kinds of intuitive messages are going to come as feelings in your body, gut instincts, or a thought that flies into your head out of the blue that, you know, you don't know why. You weren't thinking about that before. It just flew into your head. I've had countless numbers of experiences where a thought about an old customer comes into my head, and then I track them down and find them, only to find that they have a new piece of business for me. And they were trying to find me just exactly the same time I was trying to find them.
Does that require you to silence yourself? I mean, we have so much going on in our heads. To even begin our 7 steps, must we sit quietly in a space by ourselves?
You'll have to have a morning meeting with your partner, much the same as you would have a meeting with your boss, or with, if you're a CEO, with your chair of your board. But you're going to have a morning meeting every single morning that lasts about 25 to 30 minutes. And that's where the first 4 steps happen. The first thing that you'll do is read something uplifting that puts you into a receptive mood. I find that short stories about ordinary people having extraordinary experiences are great for this step, because you're starting to believe, you're developing a new belief, which is, if they could do it, I could do it. If they can have this kind of success, I can have this kind of success. And as we revisit those kinds of stories on a daily basis, we recognize that it's true. We can experience the same things that they have. The second step is to write out a gratitude letter to your CSO. That's what I call my source of intuition, but you can call it anything you want. God, Spirit, Divine Intelligence, Fred, source of intuition, friend, whatever you want to call it, you can call it. But you'll have a meeting with that intelligence, with yourself, that inner wisdom, every single day, and you're going to write out a gratitude letter describing what you're grateful for that you have and what you want, but describe it as though you've already achieved it with gratitude. For instance, a lot of times I'm invited to come and speak around resolution time, right? The beginning of the year. People have resolutions. They've reviewed their previous year and they're ready to get started on a new year. And undoubtedly, there's someone in the audience whose goal is, I want to lose 10 pounds. You've heard that one before.
Yes, I've said it myself.
Okay, I want to well, think about that goal for a second. If the goal is to be wanting to lose 10 pounds, the goal is to be wanting to lose. Haven't you already achieved it? Aren't you already wanting to lose? Why do you need intuition and your subconscious to help you with that goal? So a better way to describe it, to enable your intuition and subconscious to show up and help you, is to describe it as though it's already done. You might say, I'm so grateful that I'm physically fit and trim and toned, energetic, and a healthy, pain-free body that's easily able to move through life with increased vitality and energy. I love my body. See the difference? Yeah. Now you might get some intuitive thoughts that say, go somewhere, and at that location you meet an old friend who has this really fun exercise program that she's just started, and she invites you along. But regardless, you'll be guided and directed somehow through messages from other people, through gut instincts, through thoughts to go somewhere or contact someone. And if you get one that you don't understand, you simply ask for another lead. So you write out your letter, and that takes about 10 minutes. The third step is to read what you wrote, to speak it out loud with emotion. Now, you've just written gratitude statements, so you should be wearing a big smile as you're reading this out loud. And any school teacher will tell you that when you actually speak something out loud, when you read something that you wrote out loud, you're anchoring the meaning more fully within you. It's also a very nice self-check to make sure you're using the right words. Because often what we can do is describe what we don't want, thinking we're describing what we want. When I was 19, I had a business with my sister, and we had this salesperson who was quite difficult. She was very good. I mean, she closed a lot of sales and she made a lot of money. But she was difficult in that she would often jump in on sales that other salespeople were doing to complete them, and that would make the other salespeople very upset. So I got complaint after complaint after complaint about her. Well, so my goal at one period before I understood this process was, please don't let this salesperson be a problem tonight. And guess what I got?
A problem.
I got more of the problem. So when you're reading your gratitude letter out loud with emotion, you're making that sound visible or audible to your ears, and you can hear yourself, whether or not you're actually using the right words to describe the outcome of what you want with gratitude. And the next day you can change it if you've described it.
It's not the same letter every day, though.
You're writing about your goals every day. So your goals should be in the area of finances, in the area of your relationships, your health, your use of skills and talents in fun and satisfying ways, your spiritual connection, and I like throwing recreation in there as well, because we need to recharge. And recreation, getting away from what we're doing every day for work, enables us to have the freedom to be creative and innovative and not pressured. So recreation as well. So you write out the letter, you read it out loud, and then step 4 is to spend up to 5 minutes, pick 1 or maybe 2 of your goals, and use a technique that many famous and professional athletes, musicians, and even business people use on a regular basis. And that is, we close our eyes and we imagine. We imagine seeing ourselves in the completed goal. As we start to make that picture really vivid, we're going to be in a better position to describe it in our letter the next day. But it's also making it more real to us. As we start to see the image of us being in that healthy body, with that big bank account, in a workplace environment where that you feel appreciated and where you value everybody that you're working with. When you see yourself in the completed goal with gratitude, it makes you more magnetic to achieving that into your life. So those are the 4 steps that happen in the daily meeting, about 25 to 30 minutes long. And then you get up and you start going through about your day. And the step 5 is to expect and watch for leads. These are the intuitive and subconscious messages that you're going to get that will guide you and direct you towards what you want. Now, when you have positive expectations, what ends up happening because of that positive and grateful feeling is this front part of your brain lights up and dopamine's released into your brain. Some great brain research done at Cambridge University showed this. And what that has shown to prove is that we are able to focus and notice more possibilities much easier. Do you remember the last time you bought a car? Mm-hmm. Okay, didn't you start to notice that car driving around everywhere?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. You never noticed that car before. Then you started to notice it everywhere. Well, the lead up to you deciding on that particular model may have happened over a period of time. You got excited about having that car before you had it. You got, maybe you test drove it and you felt what it was like. You imagined seeing yourself in it. You had all the emotion behind owning that car. And all of the hundreds and hundreds of cars on the road, your brain, your subconscious and intuition filtered all of those cars to illuminate the car that was similar to your goal. Same thing happens with the rest of your goals as well. As you spend some time every single day and then you expect and watch for possibilities to show up, to guide you and direct you towards your goals, you'll receive them. When you receive a lead, when you get an intuitive message and you take a step, it's cause for celebration, and that's step 6. Celebrating and noting your demonstration are ways that you're confirming for yourself that your partnership is working. This is your proof. And this is the real fun part. You know, just keep a little notebook with you and make sure that you have a celebration partner to celebrate with you. I have a celebration partner in Louisiana, and I live in Seattle. And so what we do is we text the word celebrate to each other. And that means the reply will be what time later in the day is convenient to get on a phone call. So when we get on a call, we get to celebrate and say what happened. So I might have an intuitive message to contact my sister, and I'm writing about all of my goals every day, and this thought flies into my head to contact my sister. So I stopped by her office, and she was really happy because she had a computer problem that I could fix for free. So while I was there, she noticed this little tiny dot on the outside of my right leg and asked me what it was. And I was raised in Hawaii, so I have lots of freckles. And I told her it was a freckle, and she said she didn't feel that it was a freckle. Asked me to see her dermatologist. Well, I was just about to dismiss her fear, and my gut hurt. So I knew, having done this practice for a while, that I needed to do as she said, and I made the appointment to see the dermatologist. Now, every time I got a lead and I took action, that was cause for celebration. That recognition of proof is fueling my ability to see even more possibilities. Because I'm starting to trust it, I'm going to see more possibilities, more messages, more guidance along my path to achieve my goals. So I went to a dermatologist, and the dermatologist said it was nothing to worry about, it was too small, and told me I could go home. And just as I was about to go ahead and take his advice and get dressed and leave, my gut hurt again. So I told him he had to cut it off. I came back a week later to a diagnosis of cancer, malignant melanoma Clark's level 3. What I had been writing about every day in my morning meeting was my goal that I was perfectly healthy. Every cell in my body was perfectly healthy and operating in the same perfection with which it was designed. Each lead gave me one step to take along the path to achieve my goal for good health, because they were able to catch it in time, and I haven't had another occurrence. So each time I got a lead and took a step, I celebrated and wrote it down. And the reason we write it down not only is for proof, but there are some days when we're just not feeling as highly energetic on top of our game as other days. You know, sometimes there are just some days that are, you know, downers, I guess, is a good term for that. And being able to look at proof of your partnership working ends up motivating you to believe that, you know what, this too shall pass. Tomorrow's going to be a new day. Everything's going to continue to work for my good. I'm going to be guided and directed to do what is mine to do, and all will be well.
Amazing. And what's 7?
7 is it happens at the very end of the day. And that's when you give forth anything that's taking up room within you that's not serving you, so that you have room to receive what you want. I mean, it's kind of like this bottle of water. If this water is filled up to the brim, we can't fit any more water in it, right? So in order to receive any more water into that bottle, we have to release some of it. Well, the same is true for us. If we are describing and being grateful for additional good, for realized goals into our life, we need to make room to receive those. And the way that we do that is through a practice, which is step 7, and happens right before you go to sleep. So do whatever you do to get ready for bed, and right before you turn the light out, you just lay there and say thank you. Thank you for anything that comes to mind. Since I live in Seattle and it rains all the time, I'm always grateful for parking spaces up front. So I don't have to get wet. And you might be grateful for a new customer, or an ability to interact with a coworker that was peaceful and harmonious and collaborative. Or you might be grateful for your family, your pets, your health. Anything that comes to mind that you're grateful for, say thank you, thank you, thank you. The second part of step 7 is to recite a giving forth prayer. This giving forth prayer works to release anything that's taking up room within you, so that you have more room to receive your good. And when you release it, it gets put over here on the side. So this would be unforgiveness, anger, jealousy, pain, resentments, anything that's taking up room and not serving you. We're just going to use that prayer to move it over here on the side, so that you have more room to receive your good. Now, it may mean that some of that stuff bubbles up and needs more attention, and there are lots of great techniques to, you know, work through forgiveness work. But for this practice, I really, really love people. And I really want them to achieve the life that they desire. And you need to remove the stuff that's not serving you in order to receive the life you desire.
You talk about working closely with the CSO. Please explain.
The CSO is the Chief Spiritual Officer for me. And what I decided was that I had proved that this intelligence, this creative source, this source of my intuition, had helped me over and over and over again. And I decided I wanted to bring it into my business. And although I had brought my practice into my business and was able to achieve great success, I wanted to make it a little more obvious and see if it was something that I could teach to my employees as well. So I'm, as a CEO, surround myself in my C-suite with people whose advice I value. I have a chief financial officer who advises us on the financial health of our company, a chief operations officer, a chief information officer that decides what technology is great for our company and for our products, chief marketing officer, and all of these people are subject matter experts, and they have a lot of advice. They know much more than I do about their areas of expertise. Well, I decided that the source of intuition, this divine intelligence, knew more than I did about everything. Because it had already proved to enable me to achieve my goals in ways that were beyond my rational mind. And so I decided to bring it into my business, but instead of putting it in the C-suite, I actually put it at the top of my organizational chart, so that I, as the CEO, reported to it. You can imagine what my employees said. Who's the CSO? Is it a man? Is it a woman?
I wonder, I mean, we have CIOs and all these new titles for corporations now. Maybe we should have a CSO on the board as well.
Well, you know, it worked for me. When my employees asked me about the CSO, I said, look, it's a symbol. For you, it's a symbol, right? It's important for you to know what your CEO believes, and I'll explain that to you. But for you, it's a symbol because there are going to be times when stuff shows up that is unexpected and might even seem like a crisis. And what I need you to do is not let that affect you, but rather to actually write down what would be an ideal outcome. If your customer is really upset about something, write down, I'm so grateful that my customer and I work harmoniously together and that everything is peaceful and we have a fair exchange of value. If you have a flight delay that's going to make you miss a connection, well, describe that you get to your customer site or to your home on time and safely. I mean, figure out what the outcome is no matter what presents itself and see what happens. And if you get an intuitive or an innovative or a clever thought to take action, do it. If it's not too scary. And so they did. And what ended up happening is I got text messages and phone calls and emails about the CSO providing guidance and intuition that was beyond anything that they could rationally imagine. And they realized great success. I mean, we had seeming crises where we thought we were going to lose a customer because we couldn't meet a particular requirement in the contract, only to find that as our developers and everyone decided what the outcome should be, which is a great outcome for everyone, they came up with an innovative idea that had never been done in our industry before, explained it. We were able to explain it to the customer, and it enabled us to serve the customer in an even greater way as a result of this out-of-the-box innovation. So that's who the CSO is.
It sounds like, when you think about it, it's like faith. It is faith.
Yeah. Well, faith is confidence. You know, I mean, really, when we have faith in something, we are having confidence in a particular outcome, right? So as we prove and repeat this over and over and over again, it gets easier and easier to do. You know, often that first 30 days of doing anything new can take some concerted effort. Same thing happened when we learned to type, or learn to read, or ride a bike, or drive a car. I mean, think about driving a car now. We can get home after driving home from work and have large parts of that drive completely, we were unaware of of that outcome. I mean, we would get home and we can't remember details of huge chunks of that drive. We're on autopilot. It became easier and easier and easier to do over time, and the same will happen with this practice. It will be easier and easier to rely on that intuition, on that source of intelligence to guide you in seeming miraculous ways.
In part 2 of the book, you ask us to go even deeper. Many in the C-suites are focused on the bottom line. How does this focus you were speaking of help us become more successful? Is there science behind it?
Well, science is something that we are able to prove and repeat. All right, we have proof that, you know, mathematical science, 2 + 2 always equals 4. And in other types of science, we know that we can prove and repeat an experiment and get the same result. So in terms of this practice being provable and repeatable, I and thousands of others that use it since the beginning of a discussion about intuition will say that it's provable and repeatable. So in that regard, it's got some scientific elements to it. But also there's been some brain research that has shown that when we put our attention, our words, thoughts, and emotions on a particular outcome, we attract it more into our lives. We start to notice more evidence of that outcome being true. Now, we also know that you and I could look at a car accident. We could look at a car accident and have two different accounts of what happened. So it still does have a little bit of subjectivity because it's us, it's the human condition. But if a CEO wants to grow profits, that can be a goal for this practice. But if they really want to grow their business to be meaningful and serve a mission and to have all of their coworkers, their customers and suppliers and vendors on board, then they need to be describing how that looks. Not just that their business is profitable, but that everyone, all stakeholders involved in the business are experiencing something good as well.
You talk about the neural pathways. Talk about that, expand upon that a little more.
Well, I've often believed that beliefs and behaviors are tied to mental equivalence. Okay, so you might hear stories about people winning the lottery and then losing all of it. In fact, ending up in even worse conditions. Well, it's my belief, and many others, that their mental equivalent of the largest amount of good that they could stand was about here, and then they won the lottery. And because there wasn't a correlation of it being on the same level, everything about their being, their mental equivalence, pulled them back to where they felt comfortable. Now, science has shown that we have neural pathways in our brains. And the ones that are very strong and almost like grooves in our mind are tied to very strong beliefs and behaviors. This is the way it is. This is how it's going to happen. All right? And they may have learned those beliefs and behaviors over a lifetime. So in order to have a new belief, a new mental equivalence, we have to use repetitive processes, very similar to what I'm describing in my book, to generate a new equivalent, a new belief. And we can do that through repetition. We can take another neural pathway and strengthen it so that it's stronger than this old belief. It's kind of like, imagine walking through a field of grass that's up to your hips. If you walk through that field one day and come back the next day, you might not even see any evidence at all that you walked through that field. But if you walk the same path every single day, you'll start to notice the path, and it might even have a little groove, right? A little rut. And that will become your new path. So that's what neural pathways are all about, is they're tied to beliefs and behaviors.
Beautiful, beautiful. How can our thoughts and emotions act as our guiding tool to unblock our channels to achieve our goals?
Words, thoughts, and emotions are the key to achieving anything that you want. This is what's directing your attention. If your thoughts and emotions are on worst case scenarios, you're going to be attracting more of that into your life. And the way that we can overpower those negative thoughts and emotions is to use our spoken word. You can't think something negative and speak something positive at exactly the same time. Your spoken word will always win out to get your attention. So we want to direct our words, thoughts, and emotions as a cohesive unit towards the outcome of the goal that we want.
And speaking it, as you mentioned, that's part of it, with emotion.
Very important, very, very important.
How can we use denials to be successful?
Well, sometimes something will happen that just, it's almost like a record playing in your head, and it's usually a negative emotion, a fear. I knew this man who used his words, thoughts, and emotions to describe the worst case scenarios. And consequently, he got exactly what he was putting his attention on, and eventually found himself without a job. And I, of course, then met him and told him that he caused that. And he didn't believe it at first, but as we discussed it, he realized that he probably did have a hand in creating the outcome. Now, the good news is that he could change the outcome by directing his words, thoughts, and emotions towards what he wanted, which was a good job that paid well, to afford a nice lifestyle supporting his family, to work for a company that he appreciated and who he felt valued by, to be able to serve his customers in remarkable and unique and wonderful ways, to be healthy. So he started using his words, thoughts, and emotions to describe this new outcome. But he had these fears. He was fearful that he wasn't going to get hired for a new professional sales job because he didn't have a college education. He was fearful that his old boss that fired him was going to tell rumors about him. He had all these fears that were going around in his head like a record player of more worst-case scenarios. And he had to use a denial to essentially smash and demolish those records so that these positive words, thoughts, and emotions could come through. So, like the first day, he had to use denials. I deny that my past working history has anything to do with my future success. I deny that my not having a college education has anything to do with me having the perfect job, serving my company in really valuable and remarkable ways where we support the growth of our customers and our company, and all of our coworkers get along well and we thrive and prosper together. So he had to deny and follow it with affirmative talk. Words, thoughts, and emotions. So the denial essentially is blowing up that fearful lie so that the positive affirmations can get through.
Well, I wonder if that's the toughest part for people, because many people will have a default position of negativity.
Yeah. Well, again, we didn't learn to type in one day, nor did we learn to ride a bike or drive a car in one day. It took some effort until it became a habit. So by keeping your goals at the forefront of your thoughts every single day using this practice described in my book, what we're doing is, I think Inc. magazine called it priming, a routine to prime your brain for success. And that's what we're doing, is we're creating a new habit, we're creating a new set of beliefs that will enable intuition and subconscious to show up and point the way.
Talk about other ways we can unlock our good.
We can sometimes have some habits that can essentially prevent us from achieving what we want. I mean, fear is one of them. We can be fearful and describe what we don't want, thinking we're describing what we want. Another one that I write about all of them in my book, but another one that I see often are people that start things and don't finish them. Well, it's my belief that whatever we mirror into the universe will return a reflection to us. So if we're giving out incompletion, we're going to receive incompletion as our return. If we're giving out something completed and good, we'll receive something completed and good in return. So if there are things that are left unfinished, that you promised someone, that they're waiting for, it might be a good time to finish those. And that way you can receive some finished, completed goals in return.
Wow. And so the universe is kind of, like you said, reflecting back things that you do.
Well, I believe that. I mean, if we want anything in life, we need to be operating in that with that same character.
What is the fraud factor?
Well, the fraud factor, when you're describing your goals as completed with gratitude, you're saying that you have something even though rationally you don't. Now, what this will do is enable your intuition and subconscious to want to show up in order to help you operate in integrity. But your rational mind is there trying to talk you out of it, trying to say, you don't really have that. You're saying, I'm so grateful that I'm financially free with a minimum of X number of dollars. But your rational mind is there saying, you don't have that. You don't have that. And so it can make you sometimes feel fraudulent. This is not a new condition. Albert Einstein actually wrote about this human condition. He said we have an intuitive mind that's a sacred gift. And we have this rational mind that's a faithful servant. And this servant will do whatever we tell it to do. But somehow in our society, we have decided to honor this rational mind, this servant, and we've forgotten the gift. So when we get an intuitive message, a thought, or an idea to go somewhere or do something or take a step, our rational mind jumps out in front and says, wait. Let's think about this for a minute. What's every possible outcome that could happen if we take that step? Do we like any of them? If we don't like any of them, let's just do nothing. So it's also telling us that when we're saying something that's not true this moment, it's trying to tell us that we're acting fraudulent and to give up on the goal. Yeah. I have a friend of mine that's a scientist. She works for a cancer research organization. And she called me up after 2 months of having a goal to be a paid singer. She wanted to be a paid singer. So she's using the daily practice and saying that she is using her skills and talents in entertaining in wonderful ways and being paid for it, and that audiences just love her, and she feels so satisfied and fulfilled using her remarkable talents to entertain others. And after 2 months, she told me, I'm not getting any intuitive messages. I'm not getting any leads at all to take any steps. I feel like such a fraud. I'm going to give up on that goal. Well, her rational mind has essentially put this intuitive, this gift on mute, because it doesn't really believe that she's going to achieve that goal. And it wants to protect her and keep her safe. That's what our brain wants to do, is help us to stay safe and protected. So if it doesn't believe, and it doesn't believe that we can achieve a goal, it will try and talk us out of it and make us feel fraudulent. It'll put those messages on mute. So the ways she needed to combat that are twofold. First of all, keep up with the daily practice, because as we're building that and strengthening that neural pathway with the new belief, it takes repetition every single day. So keep moving through that fraudulent feeling and keep up with the practice, and go out and find other singers. Read their stories, talk to them, find out what their journeys were. As you make their story familiar to you, what you're going to start to recognize is, wow, if they could do it, I could do it. You know, there's nothing special about the way they went on their journey. They didn't wake up one morning being a great, successful singer. They had a journey to get there. So learn the story about how they got there. Make it familiar so that you get to the point where you believe, if they could do it, I could do it. Now what that'll do is, when they create this new belief, the rational mind will take the intuitive messages off mute. So she was guided and directed to go to a couple of charity events. And at one of them, she saw this trio playing over in the corner, and she scooted over, right? And as she was watching the woman singer, she thought to herself, I'm as good as she is. If she could do that, I could do that. I mean, she'd been told all of her life that she was a great singer, but her family had told her since she was a little girl that being a professional paid singer was foolish. She needed to get a serious job with a reasonable degree and to make a secure living, and that being paid to be a singer was foolish. So that was her big belief that she had to change, was being paid to sing. So she saw that, and then she went to another event, and from across the room, some guy walked right up to her, stuck out his hand, introduced himself. During the conversation, he mentioned that he had just been asked by his community to put on an event at the community center, and he had a budget for entertainment. Well, her gut is now yelling at her, tell him you're a singer, tell him you're a singer. And so she blurted that out, and he invited her to come audition, and she got her first paying gig.
That's a beautiful
I know.
story.
So
Yeah.
that fraud factor, what we do is we continue with the practice to describe what we want as though it's already complete with gratitude. And we go out and make what we want familiar to us. Learn the stories of other people that have had similar success.
The path ahead is not always clear. What should we do when we second guess a hunch?
Just ask for another lead. If you're unsure, if you aren't sure you should take that step to contact that person, to go to that place, if it's fearful to you, just simply tilt your head slightly up and say, CSO, I need another lead. What you're not allowed to do is do nothing. You have to either take the step or ask for another lead.
What about giving? Can that jumpstart our good? We talked a little bit about tithing, and I totally agree about tithing. Many of us get that lesson through the value of tithing.
Yeah. So jumpstarting your good is to give something that represents what you want to receive, some symbol that represents what you want to receive into your life. It doesn't have to be just money. I mean, it certainly can, and there are lots of stories about giving in order to receive money. But it can be anything. I have one woman who wanted to feel more appreciated. She told me she was going to quit her job. And I said, why? You have a great job. You're an accounting manager. You have all these employees that work for you, and it's a great company. She says, I don't feel appreciated. I want to work someplace where I feel appreciated. And I said, before you start putting your resume out, will you do a little experiment for me? She said, sure. I said, every single day, figure out one person you can contact, either by email, by a phone call, maybe go up to them, one person a day, and let them know how much you appreciate them. Okay? Promise? And she said, okay. So she started doing that, and she felt better, and was kind of happy. And one day, not very much longer, within a couple of months, she walks out of her office, and she has all these employees in a sea of cubes outside of her office, and her assistant was there to give her notes to take to a meeting. From down the hall comes this vice president of the company. He drops to his knees in front of her, starts flailing his arms in homage. All of the people start popping up their heads over their cubes, and she's standing there watching him, and he says, I am so grateful. I appreciate you and the accounting department so much. You found an error that could have cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. I am so grateful. Thank you so much. She felt appreciated.
That's amazing.
Yeah, if you need more time, go find somebody that's as busy as you are and offer to, maybe pick up their groceries when you go to the grocery store, or take their dog for a walk. Give them 20 minutes. You'll find that even though you only have 10 minutes to get someplace that's 20 minutes away, you arrive on time. It's crazy how this works, but it does. If you want more money, give more money. If you want more love, start letting people know you love them. Whatever you want, start giving a symbol of that first, and it will accelerate the process to return what you want into your life sooner.
We talked about repetition and how does repetition reap rewards?
Yeah, well, repetition reaps rewards because it's making what you want more familiar to you. As you continue to use the practice on a daily basis, when you start, you have to put in a little concerted effort before it becomes a habit. And you may have to ask for additional leads because you're unsure. Your rational mind is still trying to talk you out of taking steps. So you might need to ask for other leads, and you'll get them. As you start to accumulate proof over time that this practice is working, that creative source of intelligence, that source of intuition, that CSO is guiding and directing you, you'll have to ask for confirming leads less and less often, because you'll know how your partner speaks to you, whether it's through gut instincts.
What a wonderful feeling to be able to see everything working and to be so in tune that it becomes natural. It's breathing.
Yeah. Well, again, think about all the things that you learned to do. I mean, when we learned to read, we sounded out each letter, and it became a word, and then we had to figure out how that word fit into a sentence and a paragraph and a story. Now we skim entire books, and we still have the same great understanding of the message. So as we continue to work through this practice, just do it. You know, use the Nike tagline, just do it. And as we do it more often, the understanding gets to be greater and greater as we move through it.
How can you activate your subconscious and intuition?
Describing what you want as though it's already complete with gratitude. Yes.
Talk about the importance of surrounding yourself with successful people.
Right. If you're surrounding yourself with successful people, you're making success familiar and welcome to you. When I was starting out in my business career, I had the pleasure and privilege to be around some people that were very successful. And as I started to learn their stories, what I realized was they started out as just ordinary people. And they had a journey to a level of success that they were at that particular time that I met them. As I got more and more familiar with how they operated, I was able to see how I could use some of the similar ideas and similar courage and similar characteristics to develop success for myself. So it makes what you want familiar to you and not so scary.
You are a mentor to many entrepreneurs. Talk about 5 characteristics every entrepreneur needs to have.
Oh, I feel like I'm in the classroom here. I go into university classrooms a lot. And I guess boiled down in a nutshell, the first characteristic, which I think is very, very important for an entrepreneur to have, is risk-taking. They have to be comfortable with risk. I can't tell you how many times I've put payroll on credit cards because a customer has slow paid us. And you still need to support your organization as you're going through the startup phase. They also have to have vision, not just for what their product or service is going to solve today, but what's the future of the industry and the future problems going to look like, and how can they set themselves up to be able to take advantage of those. They have to be creative, really creative, whether it's their own personal creativity or surrounding themselves with a team that is creative to take advantage of opportunities that might look like disasters at the time, only to find out that creative solution ends up being a whole brand new product, brand new service that serves a lot more potential customers. So creativity is one also. And tenacity. I can't tell you how many people will tell entrepreneurs when they're getting ready to get started, when they're embarking on a new venture, all the reasons why they're going to fail. So they have to be tenacious and not take no and figure out a way. And they have to be passionate. That's probably the single most important characteristic. The passion that you have for a business is beyond the amount of money that you're planning to make. There has to be a purpose, a mission that is greater than a financial paycheck. I mean, money's part of it, certainly. We all want to do well. But if you're passionate about your mission, passionate about what you're doing, you find that 20-hour days are not as grueling as they would be if you were just doing it for the money.
Must our companies exist for more than just money?
Oh, absolutely. Purpose is the why a company exists, or why a person is here and does what they do. This answers the question why. It's very different than the question what. In my last company, our purpose was to save lives. But what we did was create software and team it up with giant pieces of equipment, put it into hospital pharmacies to automate the drug distribution process across all of the health system, enterprise-wide, and make sure that barcodes were on every drug. But the why that we did it was to help save lives, because the barcodes enabled patients to have their wristband scanned and the drug could get scanned, and it would take up to an electronic medical record to validate that it was the right drug for the right patient. At the time that we started, there were over 100,000 deaths per year in hospitals due to medication errors. And so why we existed was to help our customers save lives. And the fact that we helped them save a whole bunch of money and space and improve productivity and patient safety was a bonus. So purpose is the why that we do it, but the reason it translates into profits is because employees that are on board with why the company is doing what it's doing, when it's a bigger mission than just making money and they're on board with it, their creativity increases, their passion for what they're doing increases. They come up with more innovative ideas in an open environment to enable the company to be a whole lot more profitable than if they were only doing it for a paycheck and to grow profits for the company.
Excellent. May, thank you so much for being here. Terrific.
Thank you for having me.